It's emerged that a British captain and co-pilot of a passenger plane both fell asleep at the same time for up to 10 minutes during a long-haul flight 3 months ago. The news comes as many pilots admit they are struggling to remain alert, with 1 in 5 saying they suffer from fatigue at least once a week. What's more, there are growing concerns over EU proposals, which could mean pilots being allowed to fly more hours every year. Our transport correspondent Richard Scott has this special report.
When you're a passenger on a plane, your life is in the hands of the crew, and you'd be entitled to think that everything was being done to keep you safe. But hidden at the front of the plane in the cockpit, that might not be the case.
I've been speaking to a pilot who works for one of our major airlines. What you're about to see happened to him a few months ago. Because of shift patterns, neither he nor his co-pilot had managed to sleep during their rest period.
I'm quite tired now. Do you mind if I have a power nap? That's fine.
The co-pilot's request for a rest was legitimate, but what happened next wasn't.
About 10 or 15 minutes into that power nap, I got to the point where I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore, and I convinced myself it would be fine if I just shut my eyes for a couple of seconds. I woke up with a start, maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, and the aircraft had been flying itself for that time. And the first thing you do is obviously check your height and your speeds and all of your instrumentation. And hopefully everything has performed normally while you've been asleep, but while both of you have been asleep.
When you woke up, initially you didn't know how long you'd been asleep for, so anything could really have happened.
Yes, in a word. Well, the worst scenario is that the autopilot would disconnect itself, and then the aircraft would lose or gain height, and that would be extremely dangerous, as you'd go into the path of oncoming aircraft. And then the consequences of that are, well, I probably don't need to tell you what the consequences of that are.
Gear up. A report commissioned by the British Pilots Union questioned flight crew working for one of our biggest airlines. Of the nearly 500 pilots who responded, 45% of them said they were suffering from significant fatigue. 20% said their abilities were compromised at least once a week. The union is warning that could get worse under European proposals, which would see the maximum flying time for UK pilots going up from 900 hours in a 12-month period to 1,000 hours. At the moment, the rules for UK airlines are set by the UK regulator, and they're some of the toughest in the world. But different European airlines will have different rules set by their own countries, and the European authorities want to harmonise those regulations across the continent. Now, in practice, what that's likely to mean is that for some countries like the UK, the rules become more relaxed, whilst for other countries, they get much tougher.
The change in the European regulations, it will mean that some countries will raise their standards for the passenger, which will of course include UK passengers travelling on those airlines.
The European Aviation Safety Agency argues its proposed rules are just as safe as the current UK ones. It's now considering the views of the union and our regulator before making a final decision. Richard Scott, BBC News.